I don't think, number one, they've given the proper respect to science fiction as a legitimate area of literary.
For decades, The Twilight Zone has been celebrated as one of the greatest television shows ever made. A series that blurred the line between fantasy and reality, terrified audiences, and changed television forever. But hidden behind its legendary reputation is a story far stranger than anything that ever aired on screen. Some episodes were quietly pulled from circulation under circumstances so shocking they're still debated today. Others disappeared for decades, leaving fans convinced they had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. The truth is far more unbelievable than the rumors. And once you discover what really happened to these 3 episodes, you'll never look at the Twilight Zone the same way again. The controversial core of the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling wanted to write about the things that mattered. Things like racism, prejudice, and the dark underbelly of the American dream. But every time he tried, the network censors shut him down. Corporate sponsors did not want to be offended. Executives did not want to stir controversy. And Serling, a man with a conscience and a gift for words, found himself increasingly frustrated by the walls closing in around him. The turning point came with a teleplay inspired by the tragic story of Emmett Till, whose death shocked the nation and helped galvanize the civil rights movement. Serling wanted to tell that story, but every time he tried, his script was gutted. Every reference to the South was removed, and by the time the teleplay aired, it was unrecognizable as the story Serling had wanted to tell. That experience changed everything. Serling realized that if he wanted to say something meaningful, he would have to find a way around the censors. And so, The Twilight Zone was born, a Trojan horse disguised as science fiction, fantasy, and the supernatural. On the surface, it was a show about aliens, monsters, and strange happenings. But underneath, it was a vehicle for social commentary that cut to the heart of American life. The formula was brilliant in its simplicity. Serling used the speculative elements of science fiction as allegory for real-world issues. An episode about a suburban neighborhood descending into paranoid madness wasn't really about aliens. It was about McCarthyism and the dangers of scapegoating. The twist endings, which became the show's trademark, served a deeper purpose. They reframed everything the viewer had just watched, forcing them to reconsider their assumptions and confront uncomfortable truths. Serling himself became the face of the show. His narration, delivered with that distinctive cadence, framed each episode and offered moral lessons that were direct and unflinching. But his presence was not a given. The original pilot narrator had been fired for sounding too pompous, and Serling stepped in front of the camera out of necessity. His persona became inseparable from the show's identity. The music was another essential element. While legendary composer Bernard Herrmann scored the pilot and early episodes, the iconic theme that viewers came to associate with The Twilight Zone was composed by Marius Constant. It was a surreal, guitar and bongo-driven piece that captured the show's eerie, otherworldly tone. Yet Constant went uncredited on screen for years, his contribution overshadowed by the show's more famous collaborators. The battles with censorship never truly ended. Serling was forbidden from using certain words or addressing specific historical events directly. But he had found a way around the restrictions. By hiding his social commentary beneath layers of speculative fiction, he could say what he wanted without triggering the network's alarms. The Twilight Zone became a sanctuary for ideas that would otherwise have been silenced. In many ways, Serling's approach was a reflection of his times. The late 1950s and early 60s were an era of repression and conformity. Serling used his platform to push back, to question authority, and to hold a mirror up to a nation that often did not want to see its own reflection. But the compromises he made came at a cost. The nature of the show meant that its messages were sometimes lost on viewers who missed the subtext. And Serling himself wrestled with the limitations of the format, always pushing to say more than the censors would allow. The Twilight Zone changed television forever. It proved that a show could be both commercially successful and socially conscious. It demonstrated that science fiction could be more than just escapism. It could be a powerful tool for examining the human condition. And it established Rod Serling as one of the most influential figures in the history of the medium. But Serling's battles with censorship were only the beginning. The struggles over content and creative control would continue long after the show left the air. And they would eventually lead to a tragedy that would forever alter the way Hollywood approached filmmaking. Behind-the-scenes production struggles. The Twilight Zone may be remembered today as one of the greatest television series ever created, but its path to legendary status was anything but smooth. Behind the iconic opening narration and the mind-bending twist endings lay a production plagued by constant struggles with network executives, with budgets, with time, and sometimes with life itself. Despite its modern legendary status, The Twilight Zone struggled constantly in the Nielsen ratings during its initial run. The show was formally canceled twice by CBS before being revived. Each time, Rod Serling had to fight to keep his vision alive, battling executives who saw the show as too intellectual, too dark, or simply too expensive for the ratings it delivered. The battle to get the show on the air in the first place was nearly as difficult as keeping it there. Out of desperation to prove the series' concept to skeptical executives, Serling was forced to completely write 3 entirely different pilot scripts before CBS finally greenlit production. Each script had to strike a delicate balance. Enough science fiction to be intriguing, enough social commentary to be meaningful, and enough commercial appeal to convince the network that audiences would tune in. When production finally began, the challenges did not ease up. During the filming of the official pilot episode, Where Is Everybody?, a camera operator made a costly mistake. He forgot to remove a technical lens block or set a setting properly, destroying an entire day of expensive exposed film. The production was forced into costly reshoots that strained an already tight budget. It was the kind of error that could have doomed a less determined production team. The reshoots brought their own challenges. Lead actor Earl Holliman was suffering from a severe 102-degree fever during the reshoot. The visible physical strain and hoarseness heard in his performance were not acting choices. They were the genuine symptoms of a man pushing through illness to get the job done. The fever was so high that the physical toll is still noticeable in the final broadcast version. Stage actors stepping onto the show's set struggled heavily with the transition from live theater to filmed television. Actor Fritz Weaver, who appeared in the episode The Obsolete Man, noted that he ruined early takes because he did not realize every movement made in a master shot had to be perfectly repeated in close-ups. The discipline required for film acting was foreign to performers accustomed to the continuous flow of live theater, and many struggled with the fragmented nature of television production. Perhaps the most damaging production decision came when CBS executives forced the show to expand from its tight 30-minute format to a 60-minute format for Season 4. The change butchered the show's narrative pacing. The Twilight Zone had been built on a specific formula: a quick setup, a tense middle, and a twist ending that reframed everything. Stretching that formula to an hour created pacing problems that the writers never fully solved. The budgets ballooned, and the quality suffered. By Season 5, the show had returned to its original 30-minute format, but the damage had been done. The human toll of the production struggles was immense. Rod Serling, who served as the primary writer for 92 of the show's 156 episodes, was a man pushed to his breaking point. He worked 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no respite. Serling would later confess that the weekly series was perhaps the most physically exhausting time of his life, where he ran out of speed and ingenuity. The corporate pressure, combined with unresolved severe trauma from his time as a paratrooper in World War II, left him chronically exhausted. His long-time heavy smoking habit would ultimately lead to his fatal heart attack at the age of 50. Serling's exhaustion was evident to those who worked with him. Guest star Martin Landau, who appeared in 2 episodes, noticed a conspicuous change when he returned for season 5. The creative process itself was torturous. According to those who knew him, Serling would often suffer from debilitating writer's block. Convinced that his creativity was over, he would wander the backlot until something, a piece of a set, a costume, or even a scene, triggered an idea. Then he would run back to his office and produce another killer episode. It was an exhausting cycle of anxiety and inspiration. Beyond the production struggles, the cast of The Twilight Zone faced their own personal tragedies. Burgess Meredith, who found immense success across 4 iconic episodes, nearly had his career destroyed during the McCarthy-era Red Scare. He was blacklisted by the House Un-American Activities Committee for his liberal views, making it difficult for him to find work in Hollywood for years. The blacklist that silenced so many talented performers came close to silencing one of the show's most memorable faces. Vic Morrow, who would later star in the 1983 film adaptation, had been haunted for decades by a dark premonition. Friends and family revealed that Morrow had a highly specific, intense fear that he would eventually die in a helicopter accident. While filming Dirty Mary Crazy Larry in 1973, he insisted on a $1 million life insurance policy before he would shoot any scenes involving a helicopter. Sadly, the premonition proved tragically accurate. The personal tragedies extended beyond production accidents. Inger Stevens, the star of the chilling episode The Hitchhiker, struggled with severe mental health issues, profound loneliness, and toxic relationships behind closed doors. She died at age 35, leaving behind a legacy cut short by personal demons that were hidden from the public eye. The production struggles of The Twilight Zone were not merely technical challenges, they were human ones. The show was shaped by exhaustion, grief, political persecution, and personal tragedy. And yet, despite all of it, the show endured. But the struggles behind the series would pale in comparison to the controversies that would pull several episodes of the show off the air. The cultural ban of the encounter. On May 1, 1964, an episode of The Twilight Zone aired that would become the only installment in the show's entire run to be permanently pulled from syndication. It was called The Encounter, and within hours of its broadcast, the backlash began. The episode arrived at a volatile moment in American history. President Lyndon B. Johnson was escalating United States military involvement in Vietnam, and tensions with Asian nations were running high. The Cold War was at its peak, and the country was still grappling with the legacy of World War II. Into this charged atmosphere, CBS released a story that would ignite fury from Asian American civil rights groups and remain locked away from American television for more than 50 years. The episode itself was a claustrophobic chamber piece. The entire story takes place in a single attic, with only 2 actors on screen. Veteran character actor Neville Brand played Fenton, a deeply unstable, alcoholic white World War II veteran haunted by his experiences in the Pacific Theater. Opposite him was a young George Takei, years before Star Trek made him a household name, playing Arthur Takamori, a Japanese-American gardener who enters Fenton's attic looking for work. What begins as a tense but civil conversation between two strangers quickly spirals into something far darker. The narrative engine of the episode is a Japanese samurai sword that Fenton keeps in his attic. He claims he took it from a Japanese soldier during the war, though he later admits the soldier had already surrendered before he took the weapon. The sword bears an inscription in Japanese that translates to, "The sword will avenge me," and the episode suggests it possesses a supernatural, malevolent aura that locks both men inside the attic, stripping away their rational minds and amplifying their latent racial biases. The tension escalates as Fenton's bitterness toward Japan boils over into outright hostility. He repeatedly refers to Takamori with racist slurs and questions his loyalty to America. Takamori, meanwhile, reveals the source of his own guilt. In what would become the episode's most controversial moment, he confesses that his father was a Japanese immigrant foreman who used a tractor to signal Imperial Japanese fighters during the attack on Pearl Harbor. The scene is played with emotional intensity, with Takamori weeping as he admits his father was a traitor. However, there is no historical evidence of any Japanese-American resident or immigrant acting as a traitor or spy during the Pearl Harbor attack. The accusation was a dangerous, racially charged myth that had been used to justify the internment of more than 100,000 Japanese Americans during the war. The episode's writers had fabricated a plot point that validated one of the most harmful lies in American history. Immediately following the broadcast, the Japanese American Citizens League and other advocacy groups launched furious protests against CBS. They pointed out that the episode defamed American citizens and perpetuated a falsehood that had caused immense suffering. The timing of the episode, airing just as the U.S. was entering another war against an Asian nation, compounded the outrage. Bowing to the cultural pressure and acknowledging the historical inaccuracies, CBS struck The Encounter from the show's master syndication packages. It was the only original episode intentionally blacklisted due to public outcry. For decades, new generations of Twilight Zone fans discovered the show through reruns and syndication, but The Encounter remained hidden. The episode remained completely blacked out from American television broadcasts until January 1, 2016, when the Sci-Fi Channel finally unvaulted it during their traditional New Year's Day marathon. The return of The Encounter to television airwaves was met with mixed reactions. Some praised the network for allowing viewers to see a piece of television history, while others questioned whether the episode's problematic content was worth revisiting. The 52-year ban of The Encounter stands as a reminder of the power of public outcry to shape what we see and remember. But it also raises uncomfortable questions about what other episodes of The Twilight Zone might have been hidden from view for reasons that had nothing to do with cultural sensitivity. The next episode on this list was not banned for racism or historical inaccuracy. It was banned for something far more mundane and surprising: the plagiarism lockouts. By the time The Twilight Zone entered its later seasons, Rod Serling had established himself as one of television's most respected writers. But respect did not make him immune to controversy. 2 episodes from the show's final seasons would find themselves locked away in legal vaults for decades, not because of offensive content, but because of accusations that Serling had taken someone else's work without permission. The first of these involved an episode that featured a young Robert Duvall and a story about a man who found solace in an unexpected place. The episode was titled Miniature. It stars a young Robert Duvall as Charlie Parks, an eccentric, painfully shy man who cannot fit into modern society. Charlie becomes profoundly obsessed with a historic dollhouse inside a local museum. He is convinced that the tiny porcelain figures inside are real, living beings moving, when no one else is looking. The episode is a quiet, melancholic exploration of isolation and the human need for connection. But shortly after it aired, the episode became the subject of a major intellectual property lawsuit. An aspiring screenwriter named Lupo de Braila slapped CBS and Rod Serling with legal action, claiming that Miniature completely plagiarized a script he had previously submitted to the Twilight Zone production office. His unsolicited script was titled The 13th Mannequin, and de Braila argued that the similarities were impossible to ignore. The lawsuit argued that both scripts featured an alienated male protagonist who rejected human society to seek love and companionship with inanimate human figures that magically came to life. De Braila's script had been read and rejected by the production office, but he contended that the rejection had not prevented Serling's team from stealing his ideas. Fearing a massive financial judgment if the show continued to generate advertising revenue from the episode while the case was open, CBS lawyers placed Miniature into a strict legal vault. It was completely removed from all syndication rerun packages, locked away from the public as the legal battle dragged on. The case eventually went to court, and the judge examined both works closely. The court ultimately determined that the two scripts were not substantially similar in their expression. Both shared the same theme, a man finding happiness with an inanimate figure, but that theme was not original to either writer. The concept of a person falling in love with a statue or doll dated back to the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, a story that had been in the public domain for thousands of years. Beyond the theme, the court found significant differences in characterization, mood, and plot development. The old man in de Braila's script was a friendly, happy person who had an affectionate relationship with his family. Charlie in Miniature was deeply psychotic, trapped in a web of failed relationships and pathological tension. In one, the mannequins were simply dolls the old man talked to. In the other, the doll came to life as a hallucination. In one, the tone was whimsical. In the other, it was morbid and dark. The trial court determined that there was no substantial similarity between the two works, and the motion for summary judgment was granted in favor of CBS. An appeals court upheld the dismissal, but the legal red tape had already taken its toll. Despite the victory, the episode remained blacked out for over 20 years until it was finally broadcast again in 1984. When it returned, it was with a twist. The dollhouse scenes were colorized, a fad that film studios hoped would attract younger viewers to black and white content. The second plagiarism lockout involved an episode titled Sounds and Silences. It centers on Roswell G. Flemington, a loud, obnoxious executive obsessed with naval warfare who constantly blasts recordings of battles and shouts at his family. He is struck by a bizarre psychological affliction where normal ambient noises become deafeningly loud to his ears, followed rapidly by total, absolute silence. The origins of Sounds and Silences were more problematic. In May 1961, an independent writer formally submitted a script to Rod Serling's production office explicitly titled The Sound of Silence. The script followed a man suffering from an inability to process the noises around him. Serling officially rejected the submission, but 2 years later, Serling wrote Sounds and Silences, replicating the exact title structure and core premise. The similarities were too obvious to ignore. Upon the episode's debut broadcast, the original author sued Serling for direct plagiarism. This time, due to the undeniable overlap in title and premise, the court ruled against Serling. The settlement forced him to admit fault and pay $3,500 in damages to the creator. Because active litigation and settlement terms were being hashed out precisely when CBS was building the master Twilight Zone syndication packages for local TV stations, Sounds and Silences was withheld from the public. It sat in the CBS vault for 2 decades, finally returning alongside Miniature during a 1984 television special. Serling had been sued for plagiarism more than once. In fact, over the course of the show's run, he faced at least 4 separate lawsuits. 3 of them ended with settlements acknowledging that Serling had taken material from other writers. He was ordered to pay damages in each case. The settlements preserved Serling's public image as a gifted author, but they also revealed the uncomfortable truth that even the most celebrated writers sometimes crossed ethical lines. The plagiarism cases forced changes behind the scenes. Cayuga Productions, the company that produced The Twilight Zone, began purchasing adaptation rights for stories before Serling even read them. This meant that if Serling did accidentally borrow from someone else's idea, the production company had already paid for the rights. It was a smart legal strategy, but it was also an admission that the problem was real. But there was one more type of ban that the Twilight Zone faced, one that had nothing to do with racism or plagiarism and everything to do with the rights to a single piece of source material. The licensing disappearance. The final episode on this list is perhaps the strangest of all, and yet, for decades, it vanished from American television screens, leaving fans to assume the worst. The episode is titled An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, listed as Season 5, Episode 22. But, despite its place in the series, it was not produced by Rod Serling, his crew, or CBS. It was a completely independent French short film titled La Rivière du Hibou, directed by Robert Enrico and produced by Marcel Ishak and Paul de Roubaix. The film was a direct cinematic adaptation of the famous 1891 American Civil War short story, written by author Ambrose Bierce. The film's journey to American television was driven by necessity. By the late winter of Season 5, the show was in a critical financial crisis. Producer William Frug had promised CBS a full order of 36 episodes, but the production was completely out of money and severely over budget. Frug remembered seeing the award-winning French short film and realized it had almost no dialogue, making it universally adaptable for American audiences. The financial logic was compelling. The Twilight Zone purchased the broadcast rights to the French film for approximately $25,000. This was a massive discount compared to the standard $65,000 required to produce an in-house episode from scratch. The purchase instantly rescued the season's budget. Frugi later recalled that the purchase price immediately took care of the whole year's overage and brought them out at the end of the year under budget. To adapt a 27-minute theatrical short film into a standard 30-minute commercial television slot, Rod Serling had to physically cut the film down to 25 minutes. He also filmed a custom introduction and outro explaining its unique French origin. But the licensing agreement drafted by the French producers contained a strict limitation. CBS was only buying the right to broadcast the film on American television exactly 2 times. The contract dictated that the moment the second broadcast concluded, all exhibition rights reverted back to the original European filmmakers. CBS was legally blocked from printing, selling, streaming, or including the film in any standard domestic syndication package. The first airing occurred on February 28, 1964. The second followed soon after. Then the episode vanished entirely from television syndication schedules for decades. Because the episode disappeared without explanation, viewers who remembered its graphic, psychological depiction assumed it was banned by network censors for being too dark. The episode's subject matter of death and the fragile line between fantasy and reality certainly seemed like the kind of content that might offend viewers. An urban legend grew around the episode, with fans convinced that the network had pulled it because of the controversial content. The truth was far more mundane. The episode was not censored. It was legally unavailable. The French producers had controlled the rights, and CBS had only paid for a limited license. For decades, the episode remained in the vault, a ghost in the show's catalog that fans could only read about. The episode eventually found its way back to American audiences through various releases. It is now included on DVD box sets and streaming platforms, making it accessible to modern viewers. But its long absence from syndication created a legacy of confusion and myth. What makes An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge unique is that it was never really a Twilight Zone episode. It was an award-winning French short film that happened to be broadcast as part of the series. The financial crisis that forced its purchase was a moment of desperation. The limited rights agreement that pulled it from syndication was a legal technicality, and the urban legend that grew up around it was a testament to the power of absence to create mystery. The three banned episodes of The Twilight Zone represent three different kinds of disappearances. The Encounter was banned for its racially charged content. Miniature and Sounds and Silences were locked away for legal disputes over plagiarism. And An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge vanished because of a limited licensing agreement. Each was removed from circulation for different reasons, but all three share one thing in common. They were hidden from audiences for decades, leaving fans to wonder what they had missed. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.